Welcome to this week's edition of Pittsburgh Sportsline. I'm Mike Migliori with us, Smoking Jim Frazier and Al Levine, the talking machine. We have a shorthanded show tonight. Our thoughts again go out to our missing partner, Chip, and I hope everything's all well with his family, and they get our best wishes. We'll start it out as usual with a 15 to 20 minute Al Levine. What's on your mind?
Well, first I'm going to second that emotion with Chip Hayner's mom. They were at Level 20 Lounge last night, so it was nice to see Chip again. You'll see him later this week when they upload the show, and it was nice seeing Stephanie again and her friend Joanne. And we want to thank Level 20, Tracy and Colin, for having us do our show there, and we'll be back next week. Go there next Monday, Level 20 Lounge. It's easy to find. We had a great guest on the show, among others. Mike will tell you about his guest, but Rayco War Sanders showed up and did a great interview, and he's promoting a book. So I want to get that in. Then you all know that I'm helping with this Hug-a-thon, and the Hug-a-thon September 6th. So I want you to get the word out. We'll be in downtown Pittsburgh, 2:30 to 5:30. Then after that, we'll be at the Doubletree Hotel. There'll be a lot of hugging, fundraising. Pittsburgh food will be there. There'll be vendors. There's going to be actors, celebrity huggers. We're lining people up. So there's a lot of action and activity out there. I want to thank one of our Hug-a-thon team members for getting us on KDKA and WTAE TV. A few friends of mine were calling up, say they saw me on TV with the Hug-a-thon. So sorry, guys, I didn't invite you, but you were anti-Shenley Plaza. It wasn't in the park. I kept telling you. But we were on TV. They're broadcast through the area. And then stay tuned to the Tribune's going to have an article, and so will the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. And that's Hug-a-thon Pittsburgh update. I forgot, were we talking sports or anything? I'm going to only do a 6-minute dissertation on fundraising. So another thing, young Joe Richard called up, wants to know how can he volunteer to be on Hug-a-thon Pittsburgh. Go to our site, people. Hug-a-thon Pittsburgh on Facebook. Say you want to volunteer. Maybe you can be one of our huggers or volunteers to help people out. That's it for now, guys.
What about Babe Ruth? He's having a good season.
Well, another thing, Babe Ruth with Vinny Pellegrino. He has that signed program with Robert Marinville on there. You got to go to his website. When they uploaded it, the website is actually a wrong address. We're going to have Vinny back again. So see him next week at Level 20 talking Babe Ruth with Mike Migliori.
Thanks, Al. Jim, what's on your mind?
Hey, when's that event again? September what?
6th.
Okay.
And the Steelers aren't playing till that weekend in Denver. So I think you can fit that in your schedule, because I heard you and Ryan Clark will be sitting on the sideline.
I'll tell you what, everybody should get down there and hug as many Steeler fans as you can, because after the Denver game, they're liable to be throwing themselves off the Clemente Bridge.
Thanks, Magic Mike and Al. I tell you what, I want to give a shout out to my business partner, Aaron Ward, who's not here tonight. Rumor has it that she's in Augusta, Georgia, playing golf with Condoleezza. But hey, listen, if I was a gambler, I would probably be a billionaire. For example, last night in Level 20, I told everybody who was in the restaurant to bet the house that the Pittsburgh Pirates would lose last night, and if they had followed my advice, they'd have 2 homes right now.
Hold a late-breaking report. A lot of bookmakers in Pittsburgh lost money on that. They rarely lose on a bet, just so you know, in an update there, because of Smoking Jim Frazier and his great prediction.
And that's why a lot of them don't take my call. We used to do a sports show on Monday nights at a defunct restaurant that's no longer there in Station Square called the Crawford Grill.
Ah, I remember.
And one year I went 16 of 17 picking against the spread on Monday Night Football. Now, we all know this NFL only plays 16 regular season games, but because of the bye week, there's 17 Monday night games. And I'm nearly 100% on college bowl game predictions, the Rose Bowl, BCS Bowls, those type of games. and I'm deadly on boxing and basketball. Hey, by the way.
Hold it, wait. Where's your website on where I can get the Smoking Jim Frazier picks? And I'll be promoting that next week. We'll have the website up and going with film by Mike Anthony Migliori.
What is your stone cold lead pipe lock?
Yeah, the cinch.
I like that. But, everybody heard about the 98-pound lady who lifted a car to save her son.
Mm-hmm.
And the question is to you guys, how did that lady lift that little lady lift that car off her son? What do you think, Mike? How'd she do it?
I guess there's a big burst of adrenaline, a lot of hope, and maybe a lot of practice.
Yeah.
Well, I believe a strong faith, miracles happen, and plus the great boost of adrenaline, and nobody wants to see their son die under a car. And if it was just a Matchbox car, then I understand.
Well, you guys are both you guys are both on the right path, but you're not correct. I can tell everybody how she did it. How she did it was because there was nobody there to tell her that she couldn't do it. There was nobody there to tell her that she couldn't do it. All you young athletes and young people in the Bethel Park area, this is a great area for athletics. A lot of great people come out of the Bethel Park, South Park area. Never let anybody tell you what you cannot do. Prime example, 2007, there was a great football team out of Bethel Park that nobody gave any credit to. They had at least one or two losses early in the season. They stayed focused. They stayed together. They kept getting better and better each week. They got into the playoffs and nobody gave them any hope. They went into Heinz Field against Goliath, the Gateway Gators, who was ranked in the top 10 in the country at that time, USA Today. And I tell you what, they went in there. Gateway had 8 Division I athletes, including Cam Sadler of University of Pittsburgh, and they went in there and they took down the mighty Gators and almost won the state championship. They were 2 or 3 points away from winning the state championship. So young people, remember, never let nobody tell you what you can't do, and always set yourself on fire because somebody will come watch you smoke.
Thanks, Jim. That was really deep.
I got everything until the last part.
It makes me, it makes me think if I'm contributing to society the way I'm supposed to be, and in order to put things right the way they should be. Lady, look, there's no way you can lift that car. Get it out and call an ambulance. Yeah, I took care of that.
What's this on lighting yourself on fire? You're just for all pro kids, and they can do anything. Then you're telling them to light themselves on fire.
Jim's getting in touch with his inner Hare Krishna.
Okay, because here we'll channel it. Okay, we're good now.
Well, since early yesterday, there's only one thing on my mind: the loss of Phyllis Diller. Wow. Phyllis Diller, 95 years old, died yesterday. And well, I mean, just to say her name sounds funny, even when you're saying talking about her passing. Phyllis Diller may be one of the funniest people that's ever lived. Great stand-up comic, one of the first female stand-up comics, and made herself a household name for decades and decades. Again, you walk out on the street, you say the name Phyllis Diller, everybody knows who you're talking about. Her passing is, she's 95 years old. So while it's not unexpected, it still is tragic, and it's a huge loss to the entertainment industry. And that's what's on my mind.
I always liked Phyllis Diller.
I liked her too. Funny lady. Well, Jim, we're shorthanded. We got a lot of time to burn up. Tell us about the Steelers. We need to know everything from what happened the other night to what color towel James Harrison has in his bathroom.
Wow. Well, the one good thing is, in my opinion, the best tandem of wide receivers in the National Football League is Antonio Brown first and Mike Wallace second. The dynamic duo will be reunited. Mike Wallace is going to come in and sign a tender contract, his tender offer this weekend, and he will be available for the Pittsburgh Steelers come game one. I don't know if they'll play him that last preseason game or not. So things are looking up for the Pittsburgh Steelers. You're going to have to outscore teams this year. Pittsburgh Steelers have maybe the worst offensive line in the history of the National Football League, surpassing what was the worst offensive line in the history of the National Football League of the Pittsburgh Steelers of 2011. They'll surpass that this year. But they're going to have to outscore teams, and I tell you what, that defense is a Swiss cheese defense. They got a lot of holes in that defense. Right now, they're dependent on a guy like James Harrison to come back, who's coming off of a knee injury, and their defense is so pathetic that James Harrison is already trying to play game one. So you're going to have a one-legged James Harrison out there. It's like putting a one-legged man in a butt-kicking contest. It's going to be very, very difficult for the Pittsburgh Steelers to maintain that 500, which we were predicting. Most of us are predicting.
You guys are. I'm 11-5, and here's what I think. With the referees having all this turmoil there, do you see some of the holding that the defensive backfield's doing, safeties and free safeties and everything else, and cornerbacks? I think that James Harrison's going to be able to get in on the quarterback with one leg, because they're going to call some of those penalties now. They won't be afraid to throw that yellow hanky out there, because what do they care? They want to make a name for themselves as a referee. Plus, they want to get some of that big money there. So, just a little thought there that may even up some of the players. You know, if you can get that edge. But they don't look that good this year, I'll tell you that much. Not in the preseason, the few minutes that I watched, because they're playing around too much. How can you tell what the team's going to be when they're not even – they're playing certain things and schemes. They're not showing you everything. So what are your thoughts there?
Well, personally, I would rather have a 25% one-legged James Harrison than 115% of Ziggy Hood or you know, Lawrence Tillman or I just.
What about Timmons or something?
Yeah, Lawrence Timmons. I would 115% of Timmons couldn't make 25% of James Harrison.
See?
I told somebody in this room that he was the bust of the draft that year, and he's still the bust of the draft that year.
Who was the guy that said to pick him? That's what I want to know. I've heard you guys mention. I forget his name.
No, I don't know who said to pick him. It wasn't Smoking Jim Frazier, because he knows way too much about football.
No, I meant a Steeler official there.
But you know, I don't know. I think, well, again, the Denver game is kind of a novelty because, well, Peyton Manning's going to be there. Ryan Clark can't go and play there, and yeah, there's a lot of injured players on the defensive side for the Steelers. But the Steelers defense, if they get Harrison back full and they got Lamar Woodley, those are two great pass rushers, and that's probably the only thing that's going to shore them up. Their secondary, they didn't do anything to improve it. Casey Hampton, you know, I don't know if he'll be floating over the stadium or not. But,
he's practicing now. He's practicing.
Practicing to do what?
Be on the field. Yeah. Come on now.
Yeah. Well, regardless, he's still pretty old. They've got problems. The Steelers got some problems. They've got some holes on the defense. Their running back, the only fast running back they have is very small. And the wide receivers are back. Now, Jim, this is a question I got to ask you because you know some of these guys personally. Last year and the year before, whatever, they talked about the Young Money Squad. Well, Mike Wallace is coming back, and he signed his $2 million tender. So he's coming back, and his new nickname is going to be Low Money. And Antonio Brown, he's got his payday. His new nickname is I Got Mike's Money. So how are those two guys going to be able to live together with Mike Wallace knowing that Antonio Brown jumped in his spot and took his paycheck?
Well, I tell you what, it's a strained relationship. That relationship was strained last year, about 3/4 of the way through the season last year. Mike Wallace was very disgruntled in the locker room. Don't forget that this Mike Wallace, for 3 seasons, was the top-rated receiver in terms of yardage and yards per catch of any receiver that ever played in the National Football League other than Jerry Rice and Randy Moss. So when 3/4 of the way through the season, when Antonio Brown really started busting on the scene. Big Ben had a chemistry with Brown. Mike Wallace was a little bit jealous of that relationship. And don't forget, it made sense to go to Brown at that point because, one, Hines Ward at that time could have been covered by Casey Hampton. and Mike Wallace with a 4.2 speed, he was being double covered by the corner and the safety because he could outrun any corner, so a safety had to stay back. So Antonio Brown and Big Ben wanted to pass for 4,000 yards last year.
Well,
that was his goal.
Big Ben didn't have a lot of time, right? So he had to make some of those mid-range passes to Antonio.
Big Ben don't need a lot of time because he has a special ability, God-given ability to improvise. This guy got eyes in the back of his head. He's like a Barry Sanders was as a running back. Big Ben can scramble away. I don't know how he sees these defenders coming at him, but he can scramble, move, improvise, and release the ball, even with the offensive line not blocking very well. But I tell you what, but last year Big Ben's goal was one late in the season. His goal was to get to 4,000 yards. He didn't care if he had to play hurt. Don't forget he played a few games that he had no business playing because he wanted to put up the numbers to get to 4,000 yards, which is a big, matter of fact, there's been no quarterback other than Ben in Steeler history that ever passed for 4,000 yards. So that tells you what kind of milestone it is.
Well, we were talking about the stat man, how he's a stat man there. That's why he wasn't throwing that ball away a lot either. Remember? He kept throwing those short bubble screens to help out. That became notorious. So, I mean, we had a lot of that happening, and he did get the 4,000. Do you think he can do it this year with Swiss cheese on the offensive line again?
Well, if he stays healthy, Big Ben's been an Iron Man. And, when you got two receivers who both went over 1,000 yards last year, you got two receivers with the potential to go over 1,000 yards again. So Big Ben's can be well on his way to another 4,000-yard season. And a lot of 4,000-yard quarterbacks, their teams don't necessarily have winning records. So, so we're predicting they're going to go 8-8. So Ben may pass for 5,000 yards this year.
First, I kind of find it hard to believe as you were talking about the way Mike Wallace was acting in the dugout, like in the last third of the season, because I said dugout, the locker room, because it's hard for me to believe he was even in the locker room the second half of the season, because he sure as hell wasn't on the field. He disappears about halfway through the season all the time, and then in the playoffs, well, they didn't last all that long, so the Steelers disappeared right away in the playoffs. But Mike Wallace, I think, will have a decent year. Again, at the beginning of the year, I think he'll have a nice year. And since he didn't participate all the way through training camp, maybe he'll go a little bit deeper into the season and have a good year. But I believe that he will get a huge payday next season when he is an unrestricted free agent, unless the Steelers put the franchise tag on him. And I don't think the Steelers will put the franchise tag on him because they have to make him one of the top 5 paid wide receivers in the league, and they're already paying Antonio Brown an awful lot of money. I don't know if you can put all that much money into 2 wide receivers. And
that's an excellent point, Magic Mike. And we talk about coaching, not only the Steelers coaching, but coaching in the National Football League is inferior. Most of these coaches do most of their coaching playing on Madden. Back in the day, you had Chuck Noll and those guys, Bill Parcells. They really could coach all positions of the game. Now you got running back coaches and offensive line coaches who have no idea how to teach these guys any techniques. For example, the Steelers have a fast running back by the name of Chris Rainey. Chris Rainey is super fast out of Florida. And in my scouting report on Chris Rainey when he was coming out of Florida is he never took the football out of his right hand ever. High school, college, first game last week when he scored touchdowns and had a big game, he never took the ball out of his right hand. Well, you can tell the coaches in the Steelers been coaching him up because on his first carry, he put the ball in his left hand for the first time in his life, and he started to fumble before he even got hit. And because he was conscientious that he was losing the ball, he ended up getting a concussion and laid out on the field for the last 2 minutes. So my advice to the Steeler coaches, leave Rainey alone until the offseason. You're going to get the guy killed, making him run the football to his left with the ball in his left hand.
That's a great point, because one of my questions was how durable is he going to be? Because 2 games, he's taken some hits that he shouldn't have gone back in the game. I mean, I don't see him having a long career here taking those hits.
No, if you go back to our show after the draft, I told you he was way too small. He's never going to make it. Yeah, the Steelers will probably put him in or try to get him killed. They're pretty good for that. They'll run him to death, and that's it. Especially like with no blocking whatsoever. That's a rough offensive line to have to run behind.
And you know my philosophy. If you can get him a year, get him a year, because there's a lot of Chris Rainey's out there. They're only a piece of me. Use him up, run him until the wheels start falling off, and then next year bring in a couple fast
You're egging me on. I'm not going to make that comment.
You had to like the Godfather music when we was talking about the Emperor Chuck Noll.
I did like that.
Chuck Noll, that should be Chuck Noll.
I just wanted to say, before they edit that out, and whatever they do, keep that in there, because that was so apropos. You can look that word out. It was perfect. It actually was.
Was that in Rayco's book?
Not yet.
Okay.
No. There was an A word, but it wasn't apropos. I already read that. And I didn't say anything about the Emperor, Chaz Noll, or Smoking Jim Frazier. We didn't go back to the Roman times either yet.
But my question to you guys is this. And you know what? I was a big Terry Bradshaw fan. Still a Terry Bradshaw fan. You know, I taped a pregame show to watch the comedian get on Terry Bradshaw. But Terry Bradshaw was a great quarterback, one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time in the National Football League. 4 Super Bowl rings. He's 4-0 in the Super Bowl. But in my opinion, I want to get you guys' opinion. I think that Big Ben Roethlisberger is the greatest quarterback in Steeler history and one of the greatest quarterbacks in NFL history. Do you guys think that Big Ben is better than Terry Bradshaw?
You know Mike's answer. Here's what I'm going to say. The era has changed before Mike gets into his little conversation about Big Ben and everything else. Which camera am I in now? You guys are the best tonight, whatever you're doing. But anyhow, with Terry Bradshaw, the rules were different. You had cornerbacks and safeties that were knocking people out. You had a head slap. People were slapping people's helmets. You got a concussion on the first play of the game. Bradshaw was fighting for his life. He got hit so many times. He's as tough as Big Ben is now. And I believe if he were in the era that Big Ben is, he'd be putting up bigger yards because his arm is even stronger. If you remember how he threw a ball back in the day there, he was just phenomenal. And just the plays that he made, and he had acrobatic receivers. In this era, he'd be putting up 5,000 yards. I believe that. And Ben is a leader. It shows, how many times has he been MVP of the Steelers?
They don't like him.
And there's a reason.
Jealous. There's some haters. Some haters out there.
I don't think it's jealousy or envy or even hate. I just think it's the character of the guy for leadership. Not everybody's a leader. Me and you both like to talk about another sport. One of the greatest players in Pittsburgh hockey, Jaromir Jagr. There's a guy, great athlete, but would you want him leading the charge on your team? No. Let him score. Let him get the puck and put it in the net.
Don't hate, appreciate.
Wait. Okay, so what was your question? Who's the greatest quarterback? Ben Roethlisberger or Jaromir Jagr?
Jaromir Jagr. Yeah, we just went off subject a little.
Oh, my mistake. Okay. Well, Jim, let me tell you. Let me answer your question.
Glad he got that point.
First, everybody says Roethlisberger's a great quarterback, but why? He doesn't have great numbers. Okay, he doesn't have great passing statistics, anything like that. They say he's a great quarterback because he wins, because he's successful. He's won two Super Bowls. Okay, well, if that's true, Terry Bradshaw's won 4. Okay, so if you're basing a great quarterback on how successful he is, there's only one other quarterback's been as successful as Terry Bradshaw.
Joe.
And that's you know, I guess that's the only way you can look at it. So no, I don't think that Roethlisberger's as good as Bradshaw. He puts up 2 more Super Bowl wins, and we can talk about it. I tell you what he's done that Terry Bradshaw never did was lose the Super Bowl.
And Terry Bradshaw, I don't think had like a 22 quarterback rating and won a game in a Super Bowl either. I think his was a little higher.
Well, in the first Super Bowl, his rating was probably lower than that.
I'll tell you one thing that in my mind, Terry Bradshaw is the greatest ever. When Mike Webster was inducted into the Hall of Fame, Terry Bradshaw gave his induction speech, and there's never been one that good.
I agree.
That was the best induction speech I've ever heard, and I listened to a lot of them.
I agree. Well,
what do you think about all that?
Mike says Terry Bradshaw, I says Big Ben. And
Terry Bradshaw.
You said Terry Bradshaw.
Not Yarmer Yager.
Okay.
Yager was up there. I mean, believe me, if he could throw a football, he would have been probably ahead of both. But I didn't see that.
And Ben hangs with a lot of black ball players, so he's in the minority again. 2-1.
Well, now that we established that Bradshaw was the best, who's the second best?
Quarterback is still a history?
Yeah.
Bobby Lane.
I don't know. There's some tough competition.
Well, I would say
Joe
that
Gilliam.
being at Big Ben.
Jefferson Street Joe.
Well, according to Jack Ham, this is how good Joe Gilliam was prior to his drug addiction. According to Jack Ham, Joe Gilliam was the best quarterback that Jack Ham seen. And that's saying something because Terry Bradshaw was the first player picked overall, you know, and Jack Ham's not one to really mix words. And for him to come out and say that Joe Gilliam, and if anybody look out, Joe Gilliam was ahead of his time. He could throw 400 yards a game. He could play action fake. He was a skinny guy, but he had a quick release like Joe Namath and Dan Marino.
And he didn't take a lot of bad hits either. He seemed to have
he had a
elusive
quick
quality.
Release. Those quick release guys don't take a lot of hits. When, you know, that's God given. You know, Dan Marino, Joe Gilliam, Joe Namath, they had quick releases. But if you guys are saying that Terry Bradshaw's number 1, statistically, Big Ben is number 2, and statistically, Cordell Stewart is number 3. So I guess that's where you have to go. Terry Bradshaw, Big Ben, and Cordell Stewart.
Why can't I pick Jefferson Street Joe? Come on now. I liked him. He actually beat Bradshaw out to start I forget what season that was.
74
right?
Season. 74 season. And you should be able to get that in Black History Month. You should know that.
Now,
I witnessed.
You got to pay attention. Jim just gave you another opening to talk about Shenley Park.
No, I let it go. I let it go because we're talking Huggethon, Pittsburgh, and Shenley Plaza, Plaza. Not even near the park or the woods. And I don't want to know what happened there. I just think they were.
But I think I'm confident to say this. That I think that the Antonio Brown, who I drafted, and Mike Wallace are the 2 best receivers the Steelers have had since Lynn Swann and John Stallworth. Who do you guys think? And those are 2 guys that hated each other. A little story on that, just real quickly. John Stallworth came from an all-black school called Alabama A&I, which is a defunct college now. It merged with something else. Lynn Swann played at USC. Back then, you could wear smaller numbers. Both of them in college wore number 22. So Lynn Swann held out. John Stallworth came in and got number 22. But when they signed Lynn Swann, the equipment manager gave him 22. So John Stallworth and Lynn Swann already hated each other. John Stallworth was pretty much Jerry Rice of black college football. But because that he played at such a small school, instead of going in the first round like he should have, he slid all the way to the 4th round of the draft that year, which was the greatest draft of all time because you had Lynn Swann, Mike Webster, you had Jack Lambert, you had John Stallworth, and you had a guy that should be in the Hall of Fame, Donnie Shell, another guy from an all-black college. All those guys in one draft, which is incredible. So, in my opinion, Antonio Brown, who I drafted, and Mike Wallace are the best receivers in Steeler history since Lynn Swann and John Stallworth. Do you guys agree with that?
Oh, I think you have to agree with that. First, the competition is really not that steep. No, I mean, seriously, since Swan and Stallworth,
Louis Lips and
Weezy Thompson.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
And that's right.
Well, a lot of people might say Plexico Burris and Hines Ward, but I would not say that.
I don't know why anybody would say that. Granted, okay, a lot of people love Hines Ward because he's all smiley and stuff, and he's a cheap shot artist, and people like that kind of thing. But
when you're on our team,
as far as receivers, he was nowhere. Even though he may have more receiving yards and more catches or whatever because he played way too long, but he was nowhere in the same class as John Stallworth or Lynn Swann. And as far as the two of them, even though Lynn Swann made all those pretty catches and he has all the highlight things, I believe that John Stallworth was definitely the superior receiver. I think he was a much better receiver than Swann, although Lynn Swann was very good too. And that's one thing that Terry Bradshaw did have going for him, is he could throw. If he could put the ball downfield, he had two guys. One of them's going to catch it. No matter where it went, one of them's going to catch it.
Well, since I caught on the Smoking Jim Frazier picked Antonio Brown, I got to go with that. And Smoking Jim is on a hot streak right now because a guy named Stonehands was able to intercept the ball. So I got to go with his two picks. He knows how people can catch a football here. So
I told you when we started this show that Jim knows everything about football.
Thanks, Magic.
High school, college,
he does.
Pro,
Pee Wee League. I heard him talking to Rayco last night, and he was talking about Pee Wee football in Penn Hills. He knew the scout.
That's where football was invented.
That's where the kids all start getting paid to play.
Pardon me? I didn't hear that. You need to have a nice home to live in, and the parents got a nice job, and they come to Gateway.
That's where we start recruiting, brother.
For Gateway. Gateway, right? One more year. This is it now.
We can get some of them kids for Six Flag tickets.
Okay, but this is it for Gateway. This is the last year for Gateway. Well, we don't know what team it'll be next year.
When Jim was in high school, it was kind of a unique situation. They were busing one person from Penn Hills into Gateway High School.
Just one.
And it wasn't a little short bus.
That's what they say.
But, since we are mentioning,
not us.
What a segue, since we mentioned Gateway, here, I don't know if our great guys can get this photo.
Dan will get it.
But in today's Pittsburgh Post-Gazette.
Did you say Pittsburgh Post-Gazette?
Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, where you were
an employee
and a high-ranking
union official. Negotiator, too.
And I'm sure you had something to do with this.
Oh, no. I was the last one to touch it before it went to the Teamsters. See, I put it out in the street. Here, I'll hold it for you. You hold it and read.
How you get them to get a picture of it and you're wrinkling it all up
and
stuff?
I'm nervous.
It's a little wrinkle here.
I'm a little nervous. Here, I'll hold it up for you.
But the blue chip athlete here is Thomas Woodson, quarterback from Gateway High School. And that's significant for a couple of reasons. One, he plays for Gateway. Two, he's a personal friend of Magic Mike and I. We had him on our show. And three, he just signed a football scholarship to go to Arizona. He's a senior this year. Rich Rodriguez and my best friend's the defensive coordinator, Jeff Castile. But what's significant about it is he almost lost his life a year ago. His SWAG PA team, which is their 7-on-7 team here in Western Pennsylvania, went down to North Carolina, and one of the best players who was recruited by North Carolina and Duke was shot in the back by a 29-year-old Mexican, and he was shot in the leg. They never thought he'd ever play again. He played last year, and he's playing again this year. So, hey, all the mothers out there that got kids, because he's a good kid, never been in trouble, but sometimes you can be in the right place at the wrong time, and that's where he was. He almost lost his life. So all moms out there, give your sons a big hug. Tell them you love them, because you never know what might happen nowadays in this society. Go Gators.
Hi, Mom.
My mom's in heaven, so she's looking at us right now.
So I mean,
best receivers.
I already know the answer. But what do you think Gateway's going to do? I mean, really do this year? You think they can go most of the way again?
Well, I tell you what, I've been watching high school football for a long time. You know, the great ones out of Penn Hills, the Bill Fralics, and you had some great North Hills team that was ranked #1 in the country. And, of course, Gateway had a team that was ranked #3 in the country. And I played on a team that was USA Today #5 in the country. But this is the best high school football team I have ever seen. They got literally 8 D1 prospects on this team. I think that now this is a team last year that was a little young, but they still set a state record, quad A record, by beating Norwin, which stands for no win, 85-0, and they took it easy on. So this is a team that's capable of putting up that kind of points. I look for this team who still have a lot of juniors on the team, so they could be good again next year. I look for them not only to win a state championship, but arguably I think they're the best team in the country. USA Today probably will have them ranked in the top 25 in the country.
Okay, well, what is it going to make them that good? Which players in particular are standouts?
Well, right now they got 2 players. You know, you always lead from the top. If you got a quarterback with some experience and some leadership, which Thomas Woodson going to Arizona already proved that he's a great football player, and he's going there as a quarterback. So you got a quarterback that's already signed a Division I scholarship. They have a 2-way player, a tight end, wide receiver, linebacker named Jamar Parrish that is already signed with the University of Pittsburgh. Pitt over about 3 or 4 different BCS schools. And maybe the best player on the team could be a junior transfer from Keystone Oaks, who made All-State last year as a sophomore at Keystone Oaks. Rogers, right now the WPIAL has him ineligible, but I think the PIAA will step in and rule him eligible because the transfer was not for athletic purposes. It just happens to be. It just happens to be.
They moved there.
Yeah.
The family had to work.
Hey,
right?
Hey, the penny savers had an offer and they took it. You know
and he got a job and things are
happened to be in Monroe.
Lots of people are leaving South Hills to go to Monroe. All the time.
Almost nobody I know.
Let me ask you about the PIA ruling, though. How much do you think that's going to cost?
Well, you know what? We've had success with the PIAA in the past. They've never ruled against Gateway players. Now, the WPIAL always has to cover themselves by ruling the players ineligible. But the PIAA, we got some inroads there. And I can guarantee you.
And if you were a betting man, would that be like a good bet to make? That
I am a betting man.
Oh, I just said
a very successful betting man.
I heard that. I'm going to watch you Monday nights now.
and yes, put your house on it that Rogers will be ruled eligible to play not only his junior but is also a senior year. But we may allow him to sit out the basketball season.
Oh, really? That'll
be his punishment.
Benjamin Franklin may have never been president, but he's still very influential.
Lottie Dottie, we're here to party. We don't care about nobody.
Speaking of Rich Rodriguez, like I said last night, I know all the preseason polls talk about either LSU or USC or Alabama. Still, my prediction is that Michigan will play Oregon for the national championship at the end of the year, and I believe that University of Michigan will win the national championship.
Well, then again, Magic makes a good point because I like quarterbacks, just like I like point guards in college basketball. I like that leadership position, and Michigan got a 4-year starter, Denard Robinson, at quarterback, and we know he's fast because he already came out and said not that Michigan would win the Big Ten, not that Michigan would win the national championship, not that he will be win the Heisman Trophy. He said in the 40-yard dash he could beat Bolt. So he's already got the Jamaican people mad. So he came out. So you know you got to.
Is that with the uniform on or not?
You say, and he don't tie his shoes. They call him shoeless. So even with his shoes untied, he feels like in the 40 yards he can be Usain Bolt. And I tell you what, when you got that kind of speed, Magic Mike may be correct. My pick is, and I'm nearly 100% correct on my picks, is USC with Matt Barkley. Maybe Tebow is more has more faith, but I tell you what, Matt Barkley is also a guy who's a born-again Christian, and he will let you know in every interview. Matt Barkley's my pick, USC.
They'll hate him in the NFL too.
Well, they need more of that. So.
Yes,
And I'll do some research so I can talk intelligently about those subjects that you're bringing up here, Smoking Jim.
Bet he doesn't.
Oh, I'll be reading tonight. Definitely. I'm researching everything.
But and not to change the subject, but since we have an expert in multitude of different subjects, and nobody knows boxing like Magic Mike, how proud are you down that Spadafore is back? He won very impressively. He's 37 years old, but the guy still keeps himself in phenomenal shape. What do you think about Paul Spadafore and his comeback?
I've always liked Paul Spadafore, mainly because I've always liked his trainer, Al McCauley. Now, Spadafore has broken away from that group and gone with another group, the Ankelos, who, we've talked before about how sometimes they mishandle their fighters. Right now, Paul Spadafore is in a very unique position, though. He is still in very great shape. He's always kept himself in good shape. He's always been a very hard worker. He seems to have put away some of the personal problems, and that's always good for him. But he's also in a great weight class. He's now he fought his last fight at junior welterweight. Mm-hmm. He's in a weight class right now where if you step up one or step down one, there are a lot of big money fights waiting for him. Paul Spadafore is still undefeated. He's never been beaten, and he's a former world champion. So anybody in those weight classes that want to make a name for themselves that might think that Paul Spadafore might be shot or might be a little bit too old may go ahead and jump in and want to take that fight. That'll give Paul, a good bit of money, and if Paul either wins that fight, which is very possible because he is still just about as fast as he's ever been, and he hits a little bit harder than he ever did. He's always been a very technically sound fighter, has all the fundamentals, and a very defensive fighter, but now he's added a little bit of offense with a little bit of extra power. Paul's, he's right in that weight class. Manny Pacquiao is coming off of a loss. He may, want to jump back into the game and think, okay, well, let me take on a Paul Spadafore, again, a guy who's a former world champion and is undefeated because he thinks that's a nice mark on him. Well, if Paul either wins one of these fights or may lose but puts on a good show in one of these fights, he's in line for another couple of good money fights. I think he's in a very good position. He should be able to, I don't know if he'll win a world championship again, but he may be involved in a lot of good fights or a few good fights at least and make a good amount of money, which at this point in his life, at this age, that should be what he's looking for.
I always thought you liked Paul because he was white.
Well, there's that.
Where's he going to fight at? Where are these fights going to be held?
Well,
do you know?
Right now, I mean, he doesn't have anything signed. But like I said, if he's managed properly, then he'll get a decent fight, and then depending on how he does in that fight, then he'll get a couple more.
Yeah, his last fight was down in under Roy Jones Jr. Promotion was down in Mountaineer Racetrack.
That's why I was asking. I know you've been known to bet once in a while, so I was trying to segue into helping you promote something. I wasn't sure where you're going with your promotions here. You're all over the place tonight. I like it. You joined the team.
But I mean, one of the things, like a lot of people, think poorly of Paul Spadafore or talk poorly about him in his career, but again, the man was a world champion, mm-hmm. and he's never been beaten. He had one controversial draw, but he's never been beaten. There's a lot of opportunity out there for him, and Paul is a good fighter. He's always been a good fighter, no matter what the personal problems and that side of his life is. In the ring, Paul's always been a very good, always in great shape, always comes to fight, and he's been a good fighter for. It represents the city of Pittsburgh fairly well.
I agree, and I think right now he could beat Bradley. who got the decision over Pacquiao. So I agree with Magic Mike. I mean, Paul's undefeated. That's something you can't take from him. He's going to give you everything he got in training and in the ring. Never been beaten in the ring. The Pittsburgh kid, I like to see him get a big payday. And who knows? After that, if he gets his life back on track, perhaps could be a movie in the deal.
Yeah. Well, boxing movies are becoming popular. So.
Mm-hmm. That's what I hear. And we have a filmmaker here. If you need to get a movie together, get a script, Mike Migliore right here. He got Smoking Jim and I together, and look what that's done for Smoking Jim. But Mike will help you out with your script writing, filmmaking, and even he has actresses he calls up out of the phone book.
Beautiful actresses.
We had 2 there last night, Mike.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we had a couple of attractive girls come by last night. Rayco Saunders come by. Some attractive girls on hand, but didn't want to come on the air with us. But anytime you stop by the Level 20 Lounge and see Pittsburgh Sportsline in action, there's bound to be some wonderfully beautiful women in the audience.
And I got to say again, Level 20 is one of the most beautiful sports bars I ever been in, and we've been in quite a few, Magic Mike. And I tell you what, I can't wait to get back there next Monday. And
7:30, Smoking Jim, and the cameras are filming at that time, just so you know, and that'll be up on YouTube. Unlike some other venues that we've been to where they don't put that up. I don't want to mention those names, but we do put this up on YouTube. And thanks to BP TV Cable here. Dave Cable, our man, uploads that stuff for us. So again, come out to the Level 20 Lounge. They also have a new menu. So come out. I heard the menu is really great. A lot of people were there last night eating and trying the new food. They have beer specials, and they have a $7 burger special for us. So come out there on Monday nights at Level 20.
And I tell you what, when I see it on YouTube, I'm going to write down, because I know you showed the menu, because I want to write down so I know exactly what the order when I come in next week. So off that new menu.
You know what? This is just being on this show, getting education like this is phenomenal. You know, because he's writing on the Post Gazette.
Okay, well the Steelers had a preseason game, but the Pirates are still in the hunt for the playoffs. Lost again to San Diego last night. San Diego's got to be one of the 4 worst teams in the league right now, and the Pirates cannot beat this team. And they better. They're going to have to, because if they don't, they're going to miss the playoffs. They're like in a very tight race to get that last wild card spot. They're probably going to finish over 500 though, unless there's a total collapse.
Mike, I think the dollar's gone.
Unless there's a total collapse, which I don't see happening. I don't think they're going to collapse like that. But let me ask you something: if the Pirates finish over 500 but miss the playoffs, is it a successful season?
No. In my book, I've been saying it. Anytime you're 16, 17 games over 500, and you haven't done it for 19 years, and then you just get 2 or 3 games over 500, I think it's disappointing. I know it's great to be over 500, but this is a team that's really only like 2 years old or 3 years old. They have young players on there. So to me, to show some character, they have to get the wild card. They added 1 team this year just for the Pirates. So to me, it wouldn't be that successful.
I think that listen, if the Pirates have a winning season, like I said, they ought to give them the key to the city. I'm sure they already have it. I think they ought to bring the Grambling State Marching Band here to lead the parade. Listen, after 19 years of being under 500, we are so spoiled here in the City of Champions. You got to take baby steps. If you look back in basketball, a lot of people think that Michael Jordan is the greatest basketball player of all time. We'll put that to the side one time. But they couldn't get past Detroit. They took little baby steps. Once they were able to achieve greatness, they went on to win 6 championships. The Pirates are on the road. It's the journey. It's the journey. They're on that road to championship. And I tell you what, the first step is to go 500, something they haven't done in 2 decades. I think it should be a great parade. I think that the mayor should get out there and kick a field goal like he did in the Batman movie. And I tell you what, I am so proud of the Pittsburgh Pirates. And if they go 500, I'll be happy. And I tell you what, they have a key to Monroeville.
How about your house? How about your house? That's what I want to hear. Then I'll believe you.
Well, I live in Monroeville, so I don't have to lock the doors at my house. I don't need a key.
Okay. Who would you say is their MVP this year?
Pedro! You don't have to speak English to win the MVP, brother. I tell you what, I've said before. Last year, they went 19 innings and they lost. The difference between going 19 innings this year and winning is Pedro. He's the MVP. He's a difference maker. He's a guy that can hit the foot. He can hit the ball out of Yellowstone Park. I like Pedro. I like that power. You can't pitch around him a lot of times because of who else you have in the lineup. But I tell you what, my MVP for the Pittsburgh Pirates is Pedro.
No, I got to put a timeout on this one. These guys, they tell a lot of stories. They have a lot of truth that they tell you. But I know for a fact when Smoking Jim's watching a baseball game, he's half asleep. And what woke him up is Pedro's wife cheering for her husband after she blessed herself and did all that. And then when McCutcheon's wife was cheering. So I know him watching the four ladies in the stands. That's why he's a Pedro Alvarez fan. And I'm only half kidding. But he is not the MVP. I disagree totally.
I'm a Pedro fan because anytime I visit the Dominican Republic, if I got $500 in my pocket, I'm the richest man ever there.
Can't argue with that.
That's true. I've been there. That's true.
Can't argue there.
That brings up a good point there, Jim. Have you ever watched a baseball game?
I watched some highlights.
And guess who was in the highlights? Four pretty ladies. They showed the ball went 408 feet. But before that, they showed all the women going, arriba, arriba, like with Clemente. I know what you were watching. They made the highlights.
If you don't think Pedro is the MVP, who do you think is the MVP, Al?
I don't want to steal your thunder.
You can only be as right as me.
Exactly. A.J. Burnett, he changed the whole dichotomy of the team. I didn't have faith in him. He put a winning attitude. He showed a young man, James McDonald, how to pitch for the first half of the season. He hasn't taught him how to pitch the second half. But this is the baby steps that we're taking, as I've been taught by my friend here. But A.J. Burnett, just for the character, the toughness, the grittiness that he puts there, going after people, you know, not putting up with anything. And then when people are cheering him and he sucks, he's swearing as he's going off the field, if you notice him. So just for that, he's an MVP. He's getting standing ovations, and he's swearing up a storm because he knows he threw a bad game. And he hasn't had many of them.
Al, we're doing a sports talk show in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
These are Steeler fans.
Yeah.
Okay? You can't use words like dichotomy. You know what that is. They're Steeler fans.
All right, well.
And Mike, wait, this is Tuesday.
Okay,
the
sorry.
game's on Sunday. Half of them are already drunk.
Darn, I wasn't reading the dictionary today. But I did see there was a cat, and it was like the cat was playing with the yarn, and that's why Pedro was so good.
That's good, because your average Steeler fan, like they say, couldn't spell cat if you spot them the C and the T.
I figured I'd be your straight man. You guys are excellent. You're on fire tonight. We missed Chip, though. Where's Chip at? We need our pirate talk here. I don't want to keep hearing Pedro, because then I think of Dave Kingman.
No, you're right. I do also believe that A.J. Burnett would be the MVP of this team if I had a vote. But I'll tell you what, the guy that I think is the best baseball player on this team is Starling Marte. People that talk about trading him for, I don't care who they were talking about trading him for, were in grievous error. This guy is going to be a real-time baseball player, and while you talk about he doesn't speak English, it's not a handicap, and you know what? It may be a benefit to him because he doesn't have to listen to those other losers in the dugout complaining all the time. He has no idea what they're saying. But
he doesn't know we have a losing record for 19
not.
years.
But he is
comprende.
a fundamentally sound baseball player, and he has an arm like a cannon. He has an arm that as much as I hate to compare anybody to Roberto Clemente, he has an arm that could make you think of what Roberto Clemente could do. And Clemente could do anything.
We saw that. Well, some of us saw it. Jim wasn't around then, but that's okay.
And some of the best women I've ever been with couldn't speak English, so that's a plus sometimes. But
he was watching Pedro's wife. That confirms it, folks. We caught him. Go Pirates.
But I tell you what, Andrew McCutcheon is still batting .350. Neil Walker is a guy that's showing some capabilities to be a long-time superstar in this league. So I think the Pirates, and like you said, a couple of these guys that can't speak English. And I tell you what, the Pirates got a making if they can keep them all together to be a dynasty one time. And like you said, it's maybe not Roberto Clemente arm, but maybe Dave Parker arm out there.
Another huge baseball arm.
That wouldn't be bad, but they can't keep
striking
striking
out. Can they bring Tabata back?
They did, and he wasn't that good. Matter of fact, they should have just sent him back before the game ended. Matter of fact, my son and I were talking about it. I said, send him back. If you get caught off of first base when you're scratching for a winning run or any run, he got picked off of first base. Come on now. You learned that in Little League at the latest. So they should send him back immediately.
Well, I mean, Jim's right. There are some good ball players on it. You got guys like A.J. Burnett and Hanrahan for pitchers. Neil Walker is a good baseball player. Andrew McCutcheon is a great baseball player. I think Starling Marte is going to be a great baseball player. And then they have, well, that's it. But
Garrett Jones is doing all right this year.
Garrett Jones is having a nice second half of the season.
He is.
But they have a lot of holes. They really do have a lot of holes. I mean, they have no catchers that can throw out a guy stealing base. And neither one of them can hit for average. They have a great defensive shortstop. Clint Barmas is outstanding defensive shortstop. If he was on a team that had a bunch of hitters, then he would be a good guy to have. But I mean, again, he's just another guy that's hitting under 250. So they need to pick up their bats. They have way too many people that are hitting around 200 to be a successful team. But they've been hanging in there, and with a little bit of help from a lot of other teams, they may be able to squeak in there. But for right now, it's
well, look at last night. They stranded 11 runners, so that's one of the problems, like you're talking about.
They
13 guys struck out. That's almost half the outs in your game there.
They do that routinely. Well,
right, and that makes it tough to overcome that stuff.
Yeah. Well, thanks for tuning in. Make sure you stop down and see us Monday night at the Level 20 Lounge over near the South Park Shops, right next to Kentucky Fried Chicken over there. I'm Mike Migliori, Smoking Jim Frazier, and Al Levine. And we will see you next week on Pittsburgh Sportsline.